right, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph Selbie, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
I cannot wait for this conversation. You are the author of one of my favorite books, The Physics of God. I feel like it's so bold. That is your title, The Physics of God. That is a huge, um, mhm, that's just a
Yes, go
huge
big. It was
subject.
definitely a go big kind of title.
So it's, is this the only book that you have? I think you have, do you have any other books?
I have a book I wrote before this one that is about the ancient system in India of cyclical history, the notion that there were higher ages in the past, and then obviously that there will be higher ages again in the future. That's called the Yugas. The system is called the Yugas, and so is the book. So those are the two main ones. I have another book coming out in the fall, and I'm in the process of finishing up another. So kind of late in life, I got an opportunity to write. I had all this pent up thought and research and energy to write, and now it's starting to really flow quite wonderfully.
Sure. I love your book because it's basically literature review of all the experiments or experiences of those who have come in touch or come in contact or had some type of experiments with the universal mind, consciousness. Larry Dossey calls the one mind. Thomas Campbell calls the larger consciousness system. How did you become interested in this subject?
Well, you can sort of get a feeling for how I got here by just a couple of stories from my college time. So I entered college very much planning on getting a science degree. Shortly after I began to major in microbiology, which was really hot at that time. I'm dating myself a bit by saying that what was hot was how RNA brought information out of the nucleus from the DNA and entered into the sort of the knitting machine that is the ribosome that creates proteins. And I found that fascinating and was, well on my way to kind of having a life in science. And then sort of mid-college years, I had a life-changing hallucinogenic trip. And I had other trips that had not had the impact of this one. This one was extraordinary. I felt wonderfully calm, joyful, peaceful, loving. Everybody I met, I was kind of the ideal person that I always wanted to be. I was easy with people were easy with me. And I just felt fabulous. It was beyond wonderful. So that really made me rethink, do I really want to be a scientist? Mm-hmm. Do I want to have that be my life? And the decision was no, but with some degree of regret, because I really loved the science and I love the sciences still. But I took a deep dive from there into Western philosophy, transferred from University of Colorado to UC Berkeley and dived into Indian philosophy and Indian, basically spirituality. And from there, you see both sides of me there. The strongly drawn to spiritual teachings, strongly drawn to science. But my heart took me into being in a full-on life experience that involved meditation, spirituality. I became a founding member of the Ananda community in Northern California, which is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. And I did all sorts of things in my time here, the 46 years, 47 years now that I've been with Ananda. But as I say, I finally sort of made it through raising a family, starting a business, as well as all the work I did for the community. I helped get a community going in Seattle, another one in Assisi. All of that was wonderful. It was transformative in many ways because it taught me how to, focus my will, use my creative imagination, work with people, how to teach. And now that that kind of intensity of outward work has died down to some degree. I still have a job, but it's half-time now. I have been able to kind of come back to those twin loves, science and spirituality, and start to write this book and other books, as I already mentioned. So it's really a great marriage for me of things I know about. There's an old story about Picasso painting a painting on the side of a river, and a woman came up and asked him what he did, and she got interested, and she finally said, could you paint me a picture? And he said, sure. And he just, in like a minute, painted a picture for her. And she said, well, can I buy it from you? And he said, yes, that'll be $10,000. And she said, it only took you a minute. And he replied, no, madam, it took me all my life.
Mhm.
So I feel that way about finally getting to write these books, that this is really the expression of a whole lifetime of experience and research and reading that has been my, been my passion.
Mm. 50 years of meditation. I'm sure you've experienced some different states of consciousness during those 50 years.
I can't honestly say I've had extraordinary experiences where, 2 days went by and I finally came out of meditation, or, that I saw the heavens open and the angels descend and had a powerful experience of God. It's really been just slow, steady, quiet improvement.
Mm.
And I look back to my early years when I first began meditating, and I think it would be very hard for me to have the character that I had then, the character traits, the way I was today. It just would no longer fit me. So the transformation has really been a quiet one, but in hindsight, a profound one. Now, that's not to say, I should just toss in there, that there hasn't been those wonderful experiences. They're just not so dramatic that it would be something and it would wow somebody if I shared them. But day in, day out, I feel a depth of peace. I feel love. I feel joy. I feel connection to the divine. And then it just flows from there into my work, into my time with other people.
Sure.
And it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly say that life flows in a way that it never did before.
Mm. Flows. I love that. It's funny. I was watching a video of you and in a previous interview, and I've really I wouldn't say jaded by religion, but I've been some things just kind of rub me the wrong way. Like I it bothers me a little bit about how spirituality has so many loaded words, right? Like the soul, the source, consciousness is now the new buzzword, awareness. And it's like, I have to get over that, really, just the attachment to the identification, the words. But you made a really good like metaphor about how people use different like it's like a band, a chorus, or not a chorus, but like an orchestra, and everyone has different instruments, and people use those instruments differently, but together they create this beautiful sound, right? This beautiful experience. And I look at some people who maybe meditate differently. You in that example, you were talking about how you meditate to the archangels or meditate on the archangels, and some people do that, and it's not wrong, or it's just different. It's their instrument. I use hemisync and binaural beats through my meditations. It's different. It's my instrument to make that music. And it really kind of just, I had this like little bit of a aha moment. It was like, yeah, you're right. Like there are so many different instruments out there that people use for them that help them reach that one state of mind, that consciousness that that allows them to flow, like you're talking about, in these meditative states, or reach and tap into something higher than themselves, and receive knowledge, receive information that that pokes curiosity at them, and leads them down different rabbit holes, or pushes them to meditation and studying a mystic's journey or something like that. And I really needed to hear that in the moment, because I've been struggling with, even the word spirituality. Like it's so loaded with different meanings for people.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think that you're not alone. Many people maybe grew up in a family where the family talked about God, or went to church and the preacher talked about God. And then when you moved away from home, there wasn't a lot of societal support for that. And it gradually became more and more of a loaded concept. I decided to, grab the nettle, as they say, and just use the term on the cover, the physics of God, because it is the single best word that covers all of the potential ways you can describe it, right? But knowing that it would be a loaded term for people, I tried to, in the book throughout, persuade people to understand that it's them. There's no reality outside of who you are. There's not a judging God. There's not a vengeful God. That there's only love. There's only joy. There's only expanded consciousness, and you are that. And we can call that God, or we can call that higher consciousness. We can call it source. We can call it the absolute. There are maybe 200 names for God, but they really all are referring to the same thing. And then the other way to look at it, which is a, kind of a thought that you often hear in Eastern teachings, is that everybody is on their own unique path. That what you're drawn to, that opens you up, and the practices you use and how you apply them in your life and how you keep growing, is like no other person. So there can't possibly be one path. There can't possibly be one lexicon of terms that are the best terms.
Yeah.
So, but again, I grabbed the nettle, wanted to get people's attention and just say, there's a science to God. There's support in science for the concepts that underpin God and higher consciousness. And that really was my goal.
Well, you definitely, I mean, I listened to that thing. I mean, I think it was every day. I was driving to work and listening to the book on Audible. There's this one section in it that's just really fascinating to me, was the part in there about the multiple personality disorders, how
Yeah.
physiology, the physiology characteristics of people like change when their personalities change. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite examples of the power of the mind. in the study of multiple personality disorder, most people are aware that there are people who have distinct personalities that come and go, and that those personalities can be widely disparate. That you might have one personality that thinks it's a child, another personality that is very sophisticated, another likes to party, another that is a drug addict. They can really be widely different. But what most people don't understand or haven't ever heard, it's a better way to say it, is that not only do those personality characteristics change when a new personality comes in and a previous one exits, as it's coming in, there are physiological changes. So there are some personalities have moles or scars that other personalities don't. Some personalities, like the drug addict, can have really significant different health, including, in the case of that instance, having needle tracks on his arm. And those needle tracks went away as soon as the next personality came in. There was one personality that had 10 changes of personality in a single hour. And while that happened, there was a optical specialist, name is eluding me, who made measurements of the characteristics of the eye of each one of 10 different personality changes. And they were things like visual acuity, the usual 20/20, but even more significant things like the curvature of the eyeball, the interior pressure of the eyeball, color blindness. And what this person discovered was that the eyes of each one of those 10 different personalities were significantly different. And that they were really as if they were in 10 different bodies, those sets of eyes. So this blows people's minds, as it should, when they hear it, because we think of our physical body as being set. It's matter, and matter is unchanging. It might, matter might come and go. You eat, you get rid of old cells, the body rebuilds itself, but it remains matter and it remains unchanging. And it certainly doesn't change anywhere near at the speed that this observation from multiple personality disorders indicates. So what I explored in the physics of God was the notion that your mind is the template, really. The mind has the picture of who you are and what you look like and what you can do, the health of your body. And when the mind changes from one personality to the next with the MPD sufferers, so does the body. And we don't tend to see that so dramatically because our mind is pretty steady as to what it thinks we look like and our health and what we can do. But it's a strong indicator that the mind is strong. The other one that most people know about is the placebo effect. So you have people who are in clinical drug studies, and you have a control group that gets nothing. You have the active ingredient group who actually gets whatever that drug is. And then you have placebo takers who don't know that they're not getting the real drug. So the placebo takers are just as convinced that they're getting the new chemotherapy or they're getting the new pill for something as everyone else in the study. And some of the results are astonishing. In some cases, over 50% of the placebo takers have the desired effect, the desired outcome of that pill that they knew about. They were told in advance, this is a chemotherapy drug, or this is a gastrointestinal aid, or whatever it is. And so they start to manifest it. And one of my favorite examples is that there was a study done that involved chemotherapy, and it lasted for a year. And the participants came in for chemotherapy every 3 weeks for the entire year, as did all of them. But the placebo takers, obviously, for the entire year, got no active ingredient. They were just given water, essentially. It might have been colored water, so it looked like it, was a real chemical. But 30% of the placebo group lost all their hair. So they were just convinced that chemotherapy was going to cause them to lose all their hair. It became a conviction that then manifested. So we are really much more powerfully able to alter our body than most people imagine.
And before we started, I was talking about the power of our imagination, like being able to create from that place of imagination. Everyone just writes it off as, oh, it's just your imagination. But like, look what our reality really, like everything is created from that place. It's thought, or it comes from the imagination, or you flow states, and you create things. And people create books from that flow state, from their imagination, just going to that place that they're most creative. I've had some of the most profound meditation experiences just from my imagination, imagining that I was on a beach somewhere and using that as a tool to tap into higher levels of consciousness, if you will, or higher levels of information that I could tap into. What are your thoughts on imagination?
I think it's a very powerful tool. And there is a general term that is used, which is creative imagination, that you can be deliberate about. And creative imagination is kind of a blanket term, which includes things like visualization, affirmation, and other tools all feed into that. But if you can convince your mind of something, it will manifest. There's a great Henry Ford quote that you probably have heard, but he said, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. So it really comes from that conviction within us. And I think that's what you were talking about with the flow states and getting into a creative flow is almost a precursor to it becoming this deep conviction. And the world opens up for you. There is a real law of magnetism that what you think about and what you really try to manifest will open doors. You'll meet people who are just the right people, who can help you with something, or give you a piece of advice, or you come across a book that you need, or you get some real support that you just never saw coming. But you drew it to yourself, especially people, I find. You draw them and they help you in that process of manifestation. If it's manifesting something that takes a group, that's especially true. I think that the magic of startups, and I worked with a lot of startups. Well, I had a business doing web design, web creation for many companies. I got in on the early part of the roller coaster ride that was the dot-com boom. And so we did a lot of beginning marketing thoughts and marketing tools, websites, everything, logo, look, feel, for startups. And most of them failed. But the ones that didn't were always the one where there were one or two, sometimes three, it's rare, but there were at least one and sometimes two people who really shared a clear place they were trying to go. And they were able to succeed because they could pull people into that vision, they could make it happen together, and they were consistent. And they didn't, make abrupt left turns or right turns or get talked out of their vision by somebody, look over, oh, well, they're doing that. Maybe we should do that. They believed in what they were doing. They, the other side of it, whenever these things come up, is that you also have to put all your heart and soul into that vision to manifest it. It doesn't happen if you don't give it any energy and you don't give it determination. But again, without the vision, it definitely doesn't happen, no matter how much energy and determination you might have. So it is very powerful. If you use it inwardly, if you use it in the world of your own spiritual yearning, your own spiritual path, it can draw powerful experiences to you as well. It's the same law, it's just manifesting inwardly rather than outwardly. But I highly recommend it. In a book I have coming out in the fall of this year, I talk about that in a great deal in the various practices I recommend for. The title of the book is Break Through the Limits of the Brain, that the brain tends to just reinforce the kind of person you are right now, and that you have unintentionally created millions of circuits that just keep you going in the same way. And if you want to break through that wiring of the brain that you have unintentionally done, you need things like creative imagination to create new circuits, to rebuild your mind, to rewire your mind, to take you in new places and to make you into a different person.
Yeah, I think it's what Hebb's law. Is that what that is?
That's one of them. Yeah.
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 What is it? Neurons that fire together, wired together, or something like that.
Right. Right. I'm not sure that's Hebb's, but Hebb was an early pioneer in neuroscience, and there's a lot of things that he identified that are still, kind of the foundations of neuroscience.
Mm-hmm. Talk about that, like the manifesting the inner experiences that you like that you want, right? I think one of my goals is to, like, not necessarily every time experience this, but like experience the true oneness or love, if that makes sense, like that experience of all being all of one. Like, is that something that you can manifest?
Yes. But there's a big caveat, and I don't want to be discouraging, but I also don't want people to think if they affirm it 2 or 3 times, it's going to happen, that you would have, a marvelous, heart-opening, mind-opening, soul experience. They're very real. They're very possible. There is something known as beginner's luck, and it does work for people who are just starting to meditate. In a sense, they haven't learned how challenging it is to control the mind and to focus. And so they sit down and they have, right off the bat, they'll have significant spiritual experiences. But the key is what I mentioned, is that to go deep and to have those experiences, there's 2 sides. You could draw the grace of God. You can draw and visualize this experience happening. But you have to be there. You have to be in the now. If you're not in the now, you won't notice it. You won't be able to receive that experience or that grace, no matter how much you've been visualizing it. And there's 2 keys that I say. There's probably more, but I think these are the ones that, for me, sort of sum up the best, what you need to do to make your spiritual life go deep with meditation is that you need to learn to sit still. Sounds very simple. It's very hard. We fidget a lot. And every time we fidget, what we do is we remind ourselves that we are a body. And so every time we remind ourselves that we're a body, it takes us a while to kind of return to what it is that we were trying to do. So that's number one. Number two is you need to be able to focus your mind inwardly and not have constant thoughts going through that are, what am I going to do tomorrow? Why did Bob say that to me today? That hurt my feelings. It's very, very easy to just meander through your mind instead of really being focused. But if you can sit still, and it doesn't have to be absolutely still to have some experience, just more still than you normally are. And you don't have to have absolute focus of your mind, but that's the direction. And if you get those going, those kind of experiences will happen to you automatically because you're leaving the body and the what I call the fireworks show of thoughts behind. And what's automatically there, you don't have to create it. You don't have to, work at getting it. You have these divine experiences because they're just waiting for us. They're waiting for us to get past the mind, get past the body, and there they are. So the more you visualize it, though, that is powerful because that means you want it more. That means you're more determined to have that experience. There's the concept of devotion came into the West with the Eastern teachings of many teachers like Yogananda and others. And I have found, as having taught meditation to people for a very long time, and other Eastern spiritual teachings, I find that the average Westerner, especially the average Western male, has a really hard time with the idea of devotion, of giving their heart in a devotional manner to God. And so what I try to tell them is that devotion is really one form of determination. And if you want to be really good at playing the piano, you have to be determined. You got to put in the hours. If you want to be good at anything, you have to be determined and you have to put in the hours. So devotion is just one way in which you can push your determination. But you have to be determined. You have to say, "Listen, I'm going to do this. I really am going to do this. And I can do this." And just keep affirming that, seeing that. And put them all together, you have a very powerful recipe for deep spiritual experiences.
Sure. Well, I think the other problem with Western males is that we want to follow directions and we want to know that we're doing it right. Like, I know that's for me, for myself. Like a lot of these experiences are very subjective and they're personal, and like it's like you do the X, Y, and Z, or I follow your steps, your meditation guide, and I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Like, is this it? Like, is this meditation? Is this what I'm supposed to feel? So like we're so focused on the actual result that we lose track of the actual process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And it's a very real thing. I don't think I would say that one's probably not confined to even to men. I think it's a common experience that any meditator starting out has. I remember it myself. One of the things that Yogananda used to say is, don't keep pulling the sprout up to see if it's grown. because you just kill the sprout, right? Your doubts kill the sprout. So the longer you can go without questioning whether it's working or wondering what identifiable thing is going to validate your effort, the longer you can go without doing that, the better. And just try to enjoy what you're doing. Just enjoy feeling more relaxed, feeling, a cessation of the rapid flow of life that most of us lead, and tune in to those moments of feeling better. Tune into those moments of, releasing, letting go, so that you enjoy it and you look forward to it. And when you focus on that, you'll have magic moments. I can guarantee it. You'll just have magic moments where you go, it is working. And that was great. Let me have more.
May I have another? Yes, I think that's so important, is the letting go of that and just allowing the experience to be itself. And then not judging your subjective experience like we do so often, is like, am I doing it right? I'll raise my hand, question the teacher, is this right? Like, I think it is just, it's so important for us to kind of just accept what we're experiencing as our own and not like judge it too much, like just allow it to be, experience it for what it is. It's your experience, and don't try to grade it and say if it's valuable or not valuable. Like, if I guess the key indicator of whether or not it's something that, of value is, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel good, or does it make you feel bad? I guess I don't, like, that's my only really compass.
That's certainly what will keep you coming back. I mean, if you meditate and you feel bad, I can almost guarantee you that you probably won't keep meditating, right? I mean, that's just human nature.
Sure.
But if you tune into what makes you feel good, it'll grow. And, not to call you out in particular, but you just gave me an opening to remind people that meditation is about being, not doing. And we are such doers in America. I mean, all over the world, but Americans have it bad. We are success oriented and we're project oriented, and we have schedules and we have all these self-improvement goals. We are big doers, and it is not easy to switch from that kind of hard driving attitude to just letting it be. But that is part of the secret. Now, you do have to do, so it's not fair to just say there's no doing, but the meditation technique that I first started with is called the hung saw technique. And the hung saw technique is where you sit, again, as still as you possibly can. And then there's kind of more to this than I'm going to be able to tell you right now. But essentially, you sit and you just watch the breath. And when the breath comes in, you say hung. And when the breath goes out, you say saw. And it's a way of being realistic about the fact that our minds want to think about something. Our minds don't want to go blank. So this technique gives you something to focus on. And, many techniques do this. It's by far and away not the only one, but it's the one I know, and I could use it as an example. And you watch the breath. And what happens when you just watch it and you say hung and saw is that your breath slows down and your feelings of calmness increase, peace increase. You feel more safe. And the mind is satisfied with just saying that, hung and saw. It's a very powerful technique that, I've used for 50 years now. There are other techniques that I also practice in addition, but it's still the the go-to practice for my meditation.
Sure. I like that. I do a little bit of that. Like, I guess it's similar to transcendental meditation, where I say two syllables that mean nothing, and then it allows me to quiet the mind and go a little deeper
Yeah.
inside. I I'm very curious about your answer for this. So, you just said it's all about being, but what about people? And I find myself falling into this category as well, as with spirituality or learning to be, people still have goals or dreams, right? Like, that's a creativity comes from a lot of visualization or having dreams, and like having these aspirations and being inspired and motivated to achieve a certain goal. Maybe it's not an egoic goal, but something that is pushing us to be better and strive to be better. Like, how do you balance the both, right? Like, to be, but also kind of like, all right, there's a goal, there's an external goal that I have that I want to achieve. Maybe it's not ego driven, but it is definitely feeling like it's a calling or a purpose for me.
I think it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I think it's one of the sort of confusing points for many people. How do you reconcile what feels like, when I talk about you have to be and calm down and be centered, that you can only do that at the price of being competent and effective and focused? But it actually is just the opposite. The more centered you are in your self, your greater self, the more concentrated you become. Sri Yukteswar, the teacher of Paramhansa Yogananda, said that divine perceptions are not incapacitating, that they give rise to the keenest intelligence.
Hmm.
So the two really go together. And the way I like to teach people is to see what you're doing. Don't give up your goals, but see how you can improve yourself in accomplishing those goals, and to feed off of the increased concentration that a technique like Hung Sa gives you. In fact, Hung Sa is considered to be a concentration technique. Its purpose is to help you bring the mind to a single focus. If you can bring your mind to a single focus in your business or your project or writing a book, you are incredibly creative and productive. So the two go together, they're not apart. The other thing that meditation does is that it, by getting you centered, getting you calmed, helps you not get so emotionally wrapped around your goals. So if you have a goal that is just super important to you, or that you have made super important to yourself, right? We define those goals. We define what we should be doing. And sometimes we're fear-driven in those goals, that if we don't accomplish them, something bad's going to happen. Or we're driven by trying to prove ourselves to others, and that if we don't prove ourselves to others, that's going to be bad. So if we have those underlying motivations for what we do, in the inevitable up and down of success to accomplish anything, we're going to go up and down in our emotions. So that's the other great thing that meditation can help you with. It's not just going to erase emotional issues in a week or 2 weeks, but it does over time help you come from the right place, to do the things you're doing with concentration, with energy, but a certain distance from it, so that if what you're doing doesn't come out exactly the way you wanted, you're not heartbroken, you're not dismayed. And in fact, you can pick yourself up and get back at it more quickly because you're not having to go through all this emotional letdown. So far from being at odds with each other, meditation and accomplishment really help each other. And it goes the other way. So the more will and energy you devote to accomplishing things allows you to put more will and energy into meditating.
Hmm.
So they really feed off each other. They're great for each other. And so, as I say, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because for many people, they think, no, I can't go their way. I can't go that way. I'm not ready to go off, to the forest or the cave. I have a family. I've got children. I have responsibilities. I can't do that. But if you do meditate, it'll make everything you are doing already easier to do. You'll do it better. You'll do it with more satisfaction. And I've never stopped doing. It's never been a question of me going off to the forest. Yogananda came to America and he said, living in the world and using these tools to gain in concentration and will and energy is a higher path than going and having nothing to interact with, nothing to shape you, challenge you, make you rise to giving energy that you might have if you were trying to live in a cave. Now, ashrams are an exception. Living in an ashram, which is sort of what I have done for the last 50 years, kind of at its heart, Ananda is an ashram. But we also have families, we have schools, we have businesses, we have all the things that make it possible for us to be in an ashram. But being in an ashram is super challenging because you have sort of an even higher level of achievement you're trying to reach, that you not only want to be able to accomplish, but you want to be able to accomplish in a way that benefits others and everybody, and that allows you to give love and take care of people and support people. So it's a wonderful challenge, and I've loved it, but it's not easy. But the rewards are great when you sync up meditation and that challenge.
Oh, I love all of that. It's so funny how you hear things when you need to hear it, because I needed to hear that. I've always told my wife, I was like, I'm only one bad day away from running into India and hiding in a cave for 30 years, but just jokingly, right? But then again, it's like, if you go do that, if you go by yourself and you go out in the woods or in a cave, like you can learn how to be quiet and still and meditate and get to probably to some higher levels of awareness. But what good does that do you if you're just going to stay there, right? Like you can't translate that as a being at a being level. Like, you have to be put in situations that are going to test you. That's how you grow and evolve, right? Like, that's how consciousness, our consciousness evolves, is by putting ourselves in the fire, and it's how we come out of that fire is how we grow.
And coming out of that, it tempers us and we grow and we expand. However, Yogananda said it's good to take seclusion. It's good to, deliberately put yourself in a situation where you don't have any distractions. If you can go somewhere that's beautiful, walk in the woods, meditate as much as you can, don't talk, leave all the devices behind. It's really very good to do that, because then you come back renewed and refreshed to live your life. And so that feeling of, geez, I'm ready to run away to the to the forest for 30 years subsides, and you are more ready to take on your life. But to do it continuously, to do it for more than a few days, more than a week, to do it effectively, you have to be a really good meditator. You have to be a really accomplished meditator to meditate for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day.
Hmm.
And, I've been meditating all this time, and I've been taking seclusions, more or less annually. And the best I can do is like 5 hours a day on average. But that's wonderful, it's marvelous. And it really, really recharges me to come back and do what I'm doing with greater joy and peace and energy. It's a great tonic. So you don't have to rule out. You can go to your own version of India for 3 days and then come back, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. Yeah.
Joseph, this has been amazing, man. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. How can people reach out to you? How can they find you?
Probably the easiest way is to go to my website for the Physics of God book. It's www.physicsandgod. Unfortunately, Physics of God was taken. So physicsandgod.com. And you'll find out more about the book there. There are articles and talks that I've given and contact information. There's a course that you can take if you want to go deeper into the physics of God that I think is 11 sessions that I did a year or so ago. So there's, plenty of things that you can do to go deeper. You can contact me if you have questions. I'm always happy to interact with people who have read the book, or even if not read the book, just have questions for me. So that's the best way, physicsandgod.com.
Perfection. Joseph, thank you again. I can't thank you enough. For coming on the show and just sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure, really.